Hello, guys, and welcome back to the Million Dollar Podcast. Today, we are joined by our very own Dan Moran, member of our poker team, as it were, the WhatsApp group that's kind of become something a little bit bigger. And he's an active member in there, and we're going to talk about his progression through the micro stakes up to getting the lot in Vegas. But more on that later. Max, last time we spoke, you were sort of mid-scoop. You'd had a couple of runs. How did it go?
To be honest, it's the good, the bad, and the ugly, as you all know, with this podcast. And it was most of the bad and a little bit of the ugly. I had a bad month. I had lots of runs. Like last time, I think we spoke. It was a week or two of the scoop, and I think I had a 30th and a something else and a something else, and the something else is continued. I think I had a 14th, 18th, 21st. 12th, I don't know, everything between the final table and about 30th place. I think I managed in series events. But I didn't manage anything major. Yeah, bit of a brutal month. But you live and learn. I was working with my mindset coach, as I said, Karim. Who I think a couple of us have actually worked with, Dan Yu, and I think Endrit, I think's worked with as well. So he was helping me through it, helped me put a few, excuse me, routines in place to help me manage, the tough sleep pattern and the horrendous variance. But yeah, as you all know, we try and be as transparent as we can on the podcast. And yeah, it was my worst month ever, if I'm perfectly honest. But that means in my mind, it can only get better this month. So on we move, on we go. I'm back to the early schedule, back to getting up early in the morning, back to the exercise, back to the journaling, back to try and do everything in a bit more organized fashion and play in the early schedule. And yeah, enjoying a bit more balance than the sort of 3 a.m., 4 a.m. late nights and lack of sleep kind of thing.
Good stuff. Good to hear. From my side of the fence, so I was living with Dan just after I was living with Leo, and we had a good time there. We had quite a nice, I'd say, dynamic environment. We were working hard, getting after it, putting some volume in. The results were there. For me, had a deep run in the 1500 PLO, which I almost gave up trying to satellite into because I'd bubbled so many of them. And I was just, at one point, there was like a big death slam, and Dan was like, "What the hell's going on, mate? Like, sort yourself out." And I think, Max, you mentioned it on your stream the other day. You were talking about the fact that for some reason there's nothing more infuriating than bubbling something. And
A
as
Saturday,
always,
specifically a satellite.
a Sati,
Specifically a satellite.
and it's always like a ropey hand that shouldn't have been in there that's ended up calling off, and
Always.
always.
Yeah.
So it was really frustrating, and like I did have a bit of a tilt moment there, but luckily we got in and managers got through with like 3 big blinds and then just sort of spun it up and got ironed out by Jason Kuhn of all people, which was a fun experience. So yeah, the results have been good. I'm now in Croatia. I'm in a PLO grindhouse with some of my Slovakian PLO friends, and yeah, it's carnage, to be fair. Like two of the guys are playing like the VIP games on GG every day, and I'm one of those guys that does get a bit induced by that. So I'm sat there grinding the 2-5, feeling like it's absolute micros. But at the end of the day, we're all in different places on our journey, and I don't have the bankroll to support those stakes, even though I'm seeing some insane action that these guys are finding. But regardless, it's a great learning experience, and it's good to put yourself in sort of dynamic settings with people that are doing similar things to you, as I learned with Dan and as I'm learning here as well. So to get on to you, Dan, obviously me and Max know your story very well, but give us a little intro of what you've been doing, how you got into poker, and what was the start for you?
Yeah, all right. What's up, guys? So my name's Dan. I've known these guys for 18 months now.
Feels like years.
We've been,
but
yeah, it does feel like a long time.
It does.
But yeah, we just I was added to the chat, thankfully, and yeah, we've just been getting along ever since. So it's really good to be here. I've watched a couple of the podcasts myself, and yeah, they're always good fun. So yeah, I've been playing poker now for probably just over 3 years. I started playing in first year of uni, really properly. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced this, like starting off with the two cent games. Then maybe you spin up £100 to take to the casino, and you sit down in a cash game with all your money on the table, and like a 50-year-old Paul from Bristol, just wipes you out, I don't know, within half an hour.
Of course he's called Paul.
Paul or Phil, or one of those. One of
Yeah,
those.
exactly. The most
Very
generic,
super.
exactly the most generic English
Yeah.
names ever. Just end up with your money.
These fat guys, like the bright red face. Yeah, they're there every night. They love
Those
it.
guys, yeah.
But yeah, so I started out like that, playing with friends. Maybe I'd play with my uni friends, £5 buy-ins and stuff. And I guess I just liked it a bit more than they did. So when we'd finish our home game, maybe I'd go and log on online and play a bit more on PokerStars. Or so yeah, I loved it. I joined the Poker Society. Bristol had quite a decent one. It was a £5 tournament every Monday. Got about 30 to 40 people. It was fun. And then I guess it all started really heating up when I met Jack. I'm sure you guys have spoken a lot about Jack.
Yeah,
And,
absolutely, and his success in the game. And
Yeah.
was it like by chance you met Jack? Was it in Bristol, I believe?
No, it wasn't him. So I knew who Jack was, but he didn't know who I was. So it was like one of those spots. So I got to play the Goliath in Coventry. I think I probably had less than £1,000 to my name, most of that being my student loan. And I'm going out to play this £100 tournament in Coventry. And I think I ended up playing on the same table as Jack for a bit. We got chatting. So I knew he was from Bristol. He also dropped out of Bristol University. And yeah, I guess he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I don't see how he saw something in me back then, because yeah, I don't think I was playing very well. But
You felt like you were just sort of dusting it, did you, or what?
well, I mean, you have that feeling deep down that maybe you're not winning in the games that you're playing in. I mean, it was very early on for me, so I didn't really have the results behind me. Yeah, you could see by the state of my bankroll that things had not gone too well. But yeah, we ended up kind of becoming friends and talking for a few months, and then he had that score in the WPT in Nottingham, where he won the WPT 500. And suddenly he saw this opportunity where he had a bit of a role behind him, and he saw someone that maybe he saw a bit of himself in, someone who he thought he could teach, to like basically coach me up and put me in the games, and we'll split the profit 50-50 and kind of go from there.
And so, what stakes did you start at in that deal?
So I think I started around playing $11 tournaments, and this was November, December of 2019, I think.
Mhm.
So yeah, I started playing probably those stakes, maybe $22 tournaments, and then I dabbled in a 55 here and there, had some really good results at the start. And yeah, Jack just kind of was having a great time by himself. He was having all these scores and like his bankroll slowly increasing. So he was happy to kind of give me the reins. He could see that I was working really hard on my game, to just kind of move up slowly, bit by bit, month on month. Maybe now it's 6 months have passed and I'm dabbling in 109s, or I'm like trying to flick a satellite into to play a 1K. And yeah, it was fun how much freedom he gave me, to be honest. I guess I had a positive experience overall.
Yeah, I wish. I was going to say, I wish moving up the stakes slowly was $11 tournaments to 6 months later flicking 1K saves to 1Ks. If anyone's thoroughly researched into my poker background, it took me a lot more than 6 months to get to that point. I think you skipped about 5 years in between. For me, it took me a long time to move up the stakes with the ABI. Yeah, I mean,
But this is the
that's
beauty
very
of being
impressive.
backed, right?
So impressive, of course. Yeah, I know, but in terms of just
Mhm.
having the confidence and the know-how, obviously, we all know how hard you work on your game, Dan. Yeah, that's. I think you played that down, but that's mighty impressive to go from playing sort of an $11 ABI to what sounds like maybe 50 or north of it in 6 months. Yeah, that's pretty impressive. That's kind of from I'm getting my feet wet to I can make a good $50 ABI 30, 40, 50.
Yeah.
So you can make a really good living at that. Like that's exactly. There's a lot of professionals playing that, don't progress much higher than that. Like so, yeah, that is impressive.
You don't tell your nose up at it. It's a decent.
Of course it is. That's what I'm saying. Exactly. Yeah.
And so, with that progression, where was the moment that you felt that you're talking about kind of ruffling around at uni a little bit, punting too much of your role in tournaments and not really having that self-belief that poker was for you? When was the moment? I don't want to call it like a light bulb switch or whatever because it's a bit corny, but when was that moment that obviously you'd been getting some results under Jack, moving up the stakes? When was that moment that you thought, right, I'm gonna take the bull by the horns here?
Oh, well, it's a tough question. I mean, there were a lot of ups and downs in the kind of 18 months that I was backed by Jack, and I guess as I said, I had a nice start, a nice first few months, but then I did have about a 6-month period where I just could not win. I just could not win a session. And I think I had some runs where I would go like 20 sessions without winning money, and like thinking about that now, it was really rough, really, really rough. And at some point you have to kind of accept that it's not just negative variance, you know. It's what you're doing, it's how you're preparing for your sessions, it's how you're cooling down from your sessions, it's like your focus, whether you're on your phone, like tilt, like all these things. But yeah, they affect your win rate, and you can sit there and be like, oh, I had kings into aces 5 times this session, what's that about? But like, then again, why were you in the position? You know, you can always do something better, is what I'm trying to say. And
yeah, that's
so
a common thing you see across poker when people are commenting on Twitch streams or stuff like that. It's always this poor me mentality.
Yeah, exactly.
And it can be, you know, it can be something that becomes something that you identify yourself by, right? Like, how many times have you heard a guy that maybe you played with at university that didn't quite make it say, oh, I'm just, you know, the unluckiest guy ever or whatever.
Yeah.
So
I wish I was lucky enough to have that score, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Or, you know, someone watching, I was in a Skype call the other day with Endrit, and one of the other guys said something like, oh, I wish I was as lucky as Endrit. And, you know, I know that Endrit has had some good variants, but the guy is a beast, you know, like, put yourself in a 3K FT and play like that. There's talent and there's hard work that has gone into that. So getting back to you, Dan, you've got yourself up to a decent ABI. I imagine we're sort of about, let's say, a year into that process. So I remember about 6 to 12 months ago, you were playing a pretty big schedule, and that had kind of come out of nowhere. What was it like dealing with those stakes? Was it all of a learning experience? How did you feel developing?
Yeah, so it was all a learning curve. So as you say, it probably was about 6 months ago. I was suddenly playing quite high stakes. Yeah, as you say, it was kind of out of nowhere. I guess I had a period where I went through 60K downswing or something like that, and then I had like, you know, I had a couple of 15K, 10K scores, and I was about halfway out of it. And then suddenly, because you've gone down to 0 in your account, then you get halfway out of makeup. Now you've got 30K sitting in your accounts. All right. So now you can look at some of these juicy games and be like, well, I mean, we're working with a lot of money here. Like, why don't I just hop in? What's the worst that can happen? And then next thing you know, you're on your 6th bullet in a $300 tournament, and you're just thinking, what the hell is this? This is not right. So,
mate, it's so funny because it's so funny you say that, because I remember this. I don't know whether I told you about it, Dan, or whether I didn't want to make you feel bad about it, but I remember seeing that at one point.
yeah.
And it was like either someone mentioned it to me or I saw it in the lobby, and it was like, whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was kind of like, I'm like an 8-9 year pro playing 100 plus ABI, and I'm not putting 6 bullets into many $300 tournaments, and I'm just watching Dan, you know, barely wet behind the ears. Has he got a 2 on front of his age yet, or is he still a teenager? This guy's just rolling it, rifling it in every comp, all in everywhere. And then,
Yeah.
obviously they were soft tournaments. Obviously you're plus EV in them. But I think the way that I saw it from my perspective, so I'm interested in you as the person involved there who was backed. The way I kind of saw it was, I guess you kind of didn't feel it as much, which I guess is the freedom of being backed, right? I guess it was like you say, you went from 0 to 30K and it was kind of just all a numbers game. So do you think, like, just to make a question out of that ramble, do you think that that has enabled you to sort of get your feet wet at those stakes without feeling perhaps as much of the hurt of the variance, and it's enabled you to kind of grow your game playing against tough players, where say someone like me who's for a very long time been on my own role has maybe not been able to just YOLO it into like you say 6 bullets in a 300, and maybe you end up winning the tournament with a 6 bullet, right? But I would have sort of pulled away at maybe 2 or 3. Do you think it maybe helped you to understand the variance, but also to just be more comfortably competing at those stakes, do you think?
Yeah, it was really nice to be given a chance, like, so early in my journey to be able to play these high stakes tournaments and like play with some of the better players. So sometimes you're sitting on a table and you're like, well, actually, you could be like the 6th, 7th best player on this table, which obviously they're not the games that you're trying to play in, but sometimes it happens kind of against your will. So yeah, it's really that has helped me, but also probably has hindered me a little bit, because when you get thrown straight in like this, you don't really have the experience of like grinding up through the stakes with your own money.
Yeah.
Because it's not like say if you're trying to make it on your own, if you're playing $11 tournaments and suddenly you realize that you're good enough to be playing $20 ABI, $30 ABI, if your bankroll doesn't allow it, you just can't do it. You can't move up. So you have to basically, you have to have scores in order to move up stakes if you do it by yourself. Whereas if you're being staked, you can go for a rough patch, but your backer might still look at you and see how much you've been working on your game and you've improved your game. So they'll let you move up stakes without the results
that's
behind you.
true.
You know?
Whereas if you're on your own, you're just broke, right? And you've got to start
Yeah,
again
yeah.
from the bottom, and
Yeah.
that can be a big issue. But
Yeah.
you know, with those taking shortcuts, you are building experience, you are moving
Yeah.
forward. But like you say, I guess now, so fast forward to now, you just had an amazing score in Vegas. Do you want to tell us about that a little bit?
Yeah. So I guess it all comes to a head when me and Jack, we go out to Vegas. When was it? 2 or 3 months ago. And we're looking to play these big tournaments. They had 2 big series, one at the Wynn and one at the Venetian. And yeah, so me and Jack are basically in the mix every day. He's putting me into these tournaments happily. And yeah, I have 2 weeks of desperation. I couldn't win a pot out there. Just a couple of times where you're up and down doing what is it? Just musical chairs back and forth to the cashier desk where you're just rebuying into the $600 tournament, and it's just it's on repeat almost. Sit down, go back up.
Oh God.
So yeah, really bad 2 weeks, and then what do you know? Didn't cash in a single tournament out there, and then suddenly got this 3rd place in the Win Classic 1.6K main event for just over 100K.
Didn't just quickly, didn't you I think you should have built the suspense a bit more. Didn't you almost not play it because you were so done with just not cashing any tournaments, right? I feel like you told me you almost didn't play, right? And then here we go, biggest score. Go on. So talk us more on that. What ended up? Did something happen that made you end up playing it, or was there a feeling about that specific tournament? Because 6 figures a big deal, 100K score is a big deal here. Like, and you nearly didn't play the comp. Like, let's build a bit of suspense up for the viewers.
Yeah, I guess yeah. Okay, so I mean, there were lots of times on this trip where I was like, that is the last hand of poker I'm playing in Vegas. Because Vegas does that to you. There's so many what the fuck moments. Like that's to put it in the best way. And yeah, it does grind your gears, especially when the amount of money you're losing is pretty substantial. So yeah, I guess to answer your question, it was a lot of like me saying, I don't really want to play this tournament, and Jack just being like, come on, mate, let's just play. Like, let's head over to the Win. All you have to do is sit there and like play your hands. You get dealt 1 hand every minute or 2. You know, you have to play 20 hands an hour. It's really not difficult but I guess when you're having such bad results for such like so consistently, you don't see poker as like a winning game anymore. Like you don't sit down and think, today I'm gonna win money, because of like what it does to your mind. So I guess that's the sort of mindset I was in, which it's not really the best, but somehow I've managed to come out of that with a huge score.
Further from that, because you were predominantly an online grinder, I imagine there just becomes this massive pressure, right? Because you're having all this makeup that's accruing through live poker, which you know isn't your, let's say, your main game. You're the bread and butter mid stakes online MTT player. So and then also the frustration from seeing how soft the fields are. You know, not being able to win a pot. I can 100% relate with that. So I imagine, like, let's talk about after that score now. You've got kind of the monkey off your back. You've had a really nice breakthrough. All of the makeup's been cleared. You've got money for yourself. What was it that made you want to continue want to go on your own?
Okay, so it was a tough decision, and like obviously you guys helped a lot with making that decision. But I guess it comes down to sort of the negative sides of staking, which I guess a lot of people don't know or haven't considered. But say you get in a staking deal and you get in a lot of makeup, suddenly the incentives between the staker and the stakee kind of disalign, because if you're in 30K makeup and you're playing 50 ABI, you're almost chasing it. Even if you win the top of your buying range, you win a tournament or something, it doesn't even scratch the surface. So suddenly you're in this spot where you're like all or nothing. Maybe I move up stakes, maybe I up the variance and try and bink out of it, because what's the worst that can happen? I have to quit poker, if it all goes wrong. So not that so much happened for me. I guess I did feel a bit of that when I was right at the bottom, right in the most makeup, but it is just the fear of getting back into that situation. So I've come out of Vegas. Me and you are in Mexico, and there's all these series that are going on. There's series on Stars, Party, GG, like everything, and I just knew that if I stayed being backed by Jack, that I would just get in 30k makeup again like it was nothing, because he's going to let me flick higher games. It was just inevitable. So I had to just rail myself in, play slightly lower stakes on my own, and it was fine.
Yeah, there is still obviously the temptation, because both of us were obviously in a kind of a similar bankroll situation at that point, where, we are looking at those lobbies and thinking, ooh, do we want to take
1K looks juicy?
do we want to take a 30 ball of that and take a shot, and like stuff like that? So it can happen quite easily. But it's an interesting point you make about the backing. Max, you've got some sort of history with backing people, but not going into specifics. When someone has accrued that large amount of makeup, I know that you have felt often quite a bit like, come on, mate, what's going on here? What's your take on it?
I think to be honest, I've had, like you say, a bit of it. I thought you were going to ask me about my own experience being backed, which I'll come on to. Yeah, the thing is, what I think it comes down to is when you first back someone or get into backing and someone accrues a large amount of makeup, obviously in your head you back someone, and in your head it's like, oh, this would be great. Like, you got X percentage of their action, they're just going to win, because eventually they are, obviously. And then, it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes someone gets in 10, 20, 30k really quickly. That's the way backing works, right? Way poker works, sorry, right? So obviously that's the way backing works. Now, I think basically what for me it comes down to is, if you believe someone is definitely profitable, you've just got to be comfortable. If you think they're good with the stakes, like I say, as me maybe being a bit twitchy at times when a horse is in a lot of makeup, I've now realized and learned, like, if you're going to back someone, you trust, believe in that person. Hopefully you have a good working relationship, whether they're your friend or not. And you just believe in their ability and the games that you're putting them in. And I think that's really all it needs to come down to. And on top of that, of course, you need to have the money behind you, or behind you and whoever else is part of the backing deal. Like, that's all it really comes down to. In the same way that, when I sit down at the tables, I can go on massive downtings myself. What do? Just stop giving myself money to play? I'm a poker player. I believe in my own ability. Essentially, me playing for myself is part of the same business as me backing somebody else, right? It's essentially the bank of Max, or the bank of Max and who, or whatever it is, believes that Max is going to be profitable and X is going to be profitable and Y is going to be profitable. It's kind of like a business, just, I can't think of an exact example, but a business investing in racers or something, race car drivers or something, right? You back the race car driver, you need him to go off and win your races to get your money back. Otherwise, the money's wasted. It's kind of the same kind of idea. It's just that poker sometimes doesn't always work on an ability to profit basis. In terms of backing myself, I haven't been back since I was at uni, and I think that it's interesting how you talked about it, Dan, because I think that I very much admire the attitude you had towards being in a lot of makeup, in the sense that, sure, you had a backer who was very happy for you to just keep pressing register on the bigger stakes tournaments. But also, like you said, it can be hard mentally when you're in a lot of makeup and it feels like there's no way out. Both times I've been in a lot of makeup, which wasn't anywhere near the amount you were in, but for me at the time was a lot of makeup when I was younger, I've ended up buying the makeup and getting out of the backing deal. I ended up finding that for me, the pressure that being in lots of makeup brought and when I needed perhaps the money, that's when I thought, when I ended up being overall a negative for me. Whereas I know that obviously you didn't have a big bankroll behind you, which is why you were backed in the first place. You still managed to continue to play your good game, to continue to do everything right, continue to study well. When I was a younger man, like yourself, when I was more 18, 19, the time I'm talking about, maybe 20, so similar age to you, I struggled a lot with the pressure. When I needed the money, I was at uni, I didn't have a lot of money. The 3, 4, 5k of makeup seemed like a lot of money to me, and was at the time. I really struggled. So it's impressive to me that you were able to be in, a hell of a lot more makeup than that. And just continue to keep your head down. So it's definitely horses for courses, I think.
Yeah, it does speak to how good my support system was as well, because definitely would not have been able to do it alone. That's for sure. Like Jack was there, giving me loans that were off the stake as part of our agreement, just so I can like keep playing and keep paying for myself to live to play poker. So yeah, I had that. I had you guys in the group who have all been through downswings before, and yeah, and as you say, I was just still allowed to fire the big tournaments and didn't lose faith, believed in myself.
That's what you've got to do, really. I think as a whole, on the subject of backing, I think it is a little bit flawed. I think in many ways, people are being the backers are kind of getting exploited a lot of the time. Because, like you say, Dan, right? You're in massive makeup. You're not really incentivized to play your best because. Let's say you're winning like X a game. It's going to take that it's going to take you X long to get out of that situation, right? And that's just not motivating, is it? You know, the way the world works, how quick everything happens at the moment. You know, if you say, okay, if you just grind your ass off, in 9 months you'll be out of makeup and then you'll start making money. 9 months time, you know, like I want a bit of money in my back pocket now.
With no guarantee as well.
With no guarantee, you know, and that's why. I've gone into a few staking agreements. I've backed a few people, and for the most part, even players that do show some promise, there's a lot of stuff under the surface that you've just got no idea what's happening when they're playing, which games they're playing in. You know, especially if you're backing someone for live, which I was doing. You know, occasionally you'll just hear that the guy's in a game that you didn't even want him to play. Like for example, me and Leo were backing two guys in Bratislava, and one of them just sat down in a PLO game, and he's just given me a stack, and I was like, hang on a second, I got chatting to him after. I was like, that's Michael, that's the English guy. We're backing him. he's just stacked off with aces on a 3 straight in PLO. What's going on? What's going on here? You know, and so there are stuff like that happens, and it can be. It can be, annoying as the backer because you don't really have any control. At the end of the day, you're just investing in someone, and it's kind of like they could be off on the jolly.
It's very difficult, I'd say, backing.
I think for me personally, I agree with you, Dan. I think for me personally, what I was going to say is I think what it comes down to, I know I have friends. I have limited backing experience myself. I do have backing experience, but limited myself. I have friends that have had very successful and very unsuccessful backing deals. And I think that what a lot of it comes down to, like I said earlier, is trust, but also the right kind of person. So you, Dan, obviously we know you, we can vouch for you. You're a good guy, but and an honest guy, which, by the way, I like to think poker's is mostly full of honest people. But when there's a lot of money flying around, you're always going to get piss takers and people try and take advantage, especially when people have got cash on the hip. Young people have got cash on the hip that are maybe like, 10, 20 grand, is not a massive amount perhaps of their net worth, especially if they've had a massive score, and they're like, well, I'll flick this guy in. He's obviously going to be quite good, rah, and people take the piss. But the fact that, like, as I say, using you as an example, the fact that even when you was in a lot of makeup, you're not just trying to solely focus on the top of your buy-in. You're still going to play the good tournaments in the middle and the bottom. You're going to still play good satellites instead of just sneaking in a cheeky 1K when no one's looking to try and get out of it. And that's the kind of person. I think it's not even necessarily about ability, right? I think it's about the kind of person. Like George says, you turn round. Maybe it's George's night off the grind, and he's had a couple of beers, he's not looking, and the guy he's bat's gone and fucking mashed a load of the roll off in a game that he's not supposed to be, and then we'll just say, oh, sorry, mate, I didn't really realise after, but the money's gone. Now, obviously, online backing someone, like, it's more trackable, but you see what I mean? It's kind of like you take liberties. So I think, although it can be tough for the backer, like you say, George, I think it's just the vetting process has probably got to be a little bit better.
Yeah, but also, especially with online, variance is just so real. Like, the stuff you see from these stables, the stats that they talk about 1,000 buy-in downswings and stuff, and how kind of easy they are to happen. It's enough to put anyone off backing. So
we've been having discussion on your stream, Max, about the debacle on GG at the moment, where they've included a staking feature, and I think that there is some small snippets of value to be found in that feature, but there's also a lot of exploitation going on, and I know that this is something that you're quite passionate about and something that we've discussed about in our WhatsApp group, because it does feel like the wool is being pulled over the eyes of people's cold hard cash, and that's not right.
Yeah, so like first of all, you got to start by sort of, I guess, giving both sides of the story. Like, absolutely, we are very lucky, right? Any tournament I think I'm profitable in, within reason, I can basically immediately sell out in. Up to probably within reason online, up to 2K buy-in, like that. My ABI is 120, let's say, bit bigger, maybe 150 in during series. If I want to play a 2K that's got a big guarantee on it, and I stick even a little bit of markup on the right top of my buy-in, I got 5, 6 more friends that will just buy, probably without really thinking about it. So I appreciate that from my side, I'm lucky. Now, if I didn't have all those friends and I'm on GG Poker and there's the same 1K, 2K tournament that I think I'm profitable in, and I've got a good graph, then I think maybe you think fair enough, mate. You stick the 20, 30, 40%, 50% of it that you don't want to buy in for yourself. You take a shot. Maybe you even only want the 30% piece. You sell 70% of it, right? Fine. There's definitely a market for this and it's great. And there's lots of professionals that are definitely being reasonable and are giving people what they think's either a good deal or maybe they're taking a little bit more markup than they're worth, but that's sort of okay. If you know that at the end of the day, it's a money business. If you think maybe you're making 10, 15% ROI and you sell at like 1.15, 1.1 markup, that's a little bit more than what you're worth. Maybe that's all right. But there's definitely people in that marketplace. I'm not going to out people or anything, but I've seen people selling massive percentages of tournaments, claiming they're really profitable, really hardworking, studying pros, putting markup on it, and then you go and have a look at their graphs and they're pulling the wool over people's eyes because either what's happened is they're showing you an old graph, they're filtering out certain stakes from the graph to make it look better, or they're just flat up just fabricating. And it's like, I just think that just to anybody watching who uses that feature, we've all bought pieces of people on GG, I'm sure. We've all had great sweats. I mean, I feel like you had a massive sweat the other day, didn't you, Gio? I'm trying to remember. You bought a piece of a guy the other day. Did he did he final table? I can't remember. You
Yeah,
tell me.
he final table bubbled it. It was like the PLO
Of
main.
course he did. Oh.
Yeah, it was one of them. But I've had some success in just those small sort of
Yeah.
PLO sit and goes as well. There are people, a couple of decent regs from like places like Ukraine, Poland, where obviously like it's much more difficult to build a massive bankroll because there's no live action and the economy is just way weaker. So like I respect these guys. There's a guy called Hully GPN. Shout out, good player. Who I've taken loads of pieces of, and he's doing well.
Yeah.
And I respect his game. I've got him as a good reg. I tag him. I think he puts me in tough spots, so I will buy a piece. But if it's a guy, there are a few real name accounts even selling, at these high stakes, 90% at 1.1. You watch them play the first bullet. It's all a bit of a shit show. And then, they get the rake back off of it or whatever, and they're on to their next bullet with 100% of their action. That's
the
what's
thing.
going on?
That's the thing for me. Like, I look, put it this way. Like I say, not here to out anybody. But anybody who's watching, who's not really sure, who maybe thinks that, the little info box where somebody describes himself as a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year pro that's made this much this year or hasn't, and maybe shows you a picture of a graph. Do your own research before you buy, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're just kind of giving you guys a warning. There's a couple of ways you can do this. If you don't, if you're not invested in a Sharkscope account, use your free searches on Sharkscope or go and look on like OPR or somewhere like that. That's online poker rankings to see results. But if you can't do any of those things, because some of them are subscription based, honestly, go onto the staking profile of the person, because I get it. People don't want to pay a monthly fee to somewhere like Sharkscope to go and search for the results of every player, and that they have to just go on what they can see. But if you go into some of these guys' accounts that are, to be frank, taking the piss, if you go onto their staking profile on GG, people will have commented, chatting shit about them, saying bad things, because these guys are taking the piss. And like I say, I'm not here to mention names or out anybody, but at the end of the day, I don't like people being taken advantage of. And I think that, part of what we do on this podcast is like I say, we show you the good, the bad, and the ugly. We're not going to just lie to you guys and say, oh, we've all won this much this month. We'll tell you when we have a bad month. And in the same way, like, we're not here to try and tell you guys, come and buy a piece of me in the 1K tomorrow at a 1.5 markup. That's not how it works. I think we need to be, just because we're poker players and just because the aim of the game is essentially taking money off the other players at the table, that doesn't mean we've got to act like scum while we do it. I think that, there should be a code of honor with what we do, and there's a right way to do things and a wrong way to do things. And I'm not going to be party, especially when some of these guys I know are from the UK and perhaps from England, I do not want our poker community and scene to be tarnished by some people taking the piss, and just to put it out there, like, we don't accept it. It's not okay. Do your research, guys. Buy carefully. Buy in the same way you would not buy something in half of a website you hadn't researched first. Just be careful with these pieces on GG because some people are essentially pocketing your money with whilst losing in the games and living off of the rake back.
Okay, so back to you, Dan. What sort of ABI are you grinding at the moment? What are you looking forward to playing in the coming weeks and months?
Yeah, so when I started off on my own money, I was playing a bit lower, but I did have some decent results. I managed to move up faster than maybe I anticipated. I've been playing like kind of 215s if I'm feeling like, if it's looking juicy. If it's a 215 on ACR that's maybe a smaller field,
Yeah.
I'll play those. I think when you're for someone my age, I think just being aggressive with bankroll is probably a good idea, because while you do risk going broke, when you have such a good support group who is always going to pick you up, it's always going to buy your action or stake you again or something, just like really going for it, having no fear with bankroll, while being like reasonably responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how many. Would you say 200 buy-ins? That seems aggressive, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the
yeah,
guys I'm with in this grindhouse aren't anywhere near that. They're way lower. There's some real DJ activity
Your
going
life on the line.
Yeah, exactly. But like you say, sorry, Max, just talking about the age thing. Obviously, me being 27, Max a little bit older, and you way younger. I didn't even have skin in the game at your age, So it was. I completely agree with your sentiment. For me in the situation now, where I finally built a role that has eclipsed all of the other ones, and I feel a bit more financially stable. The thought of going broke just sends shivers down my spine, because it is such a soulless and empty existence. You've really got to get to grips with the fact that you're fucked up and you've got to start again right at the bottom. So I agree. I would be aggressive. What were you going to say, Max?
Well, yeah, I was going to say basically, mirror your sentiment, George. That like a ripe old, or middle age for a poker player, age of 30, old poker player, young human. Just to clarify, I think that, like, for me now, with looking to settle down, as we've discussed on previous podcasts, buy a property, have a family soon. Like, the idea of like chucking it all in the river is a bit, is not really an option for me, and hasn't been for a while. But if I could look back, I think Pad spoke about it on an Instagram story or somewhere recently, about how when you're young, especially when you're young, you should definitely be much more happy to risk it, because of the fact that, especially in certain tournaments that are amazing, like in big World Series events, for example, especially like the WSOP main, for example, having a massive chunk of yourself, like, that stuff makes sense, because if you win that tournament or farm table some of these tournaments, your whole future is kind of set. But if you lose the 5, 10, 20 grand that you've got now, it's not going to kill you, crush you, ruin your future. And especially for you, Dan, part of, I think, the thing for me was, as I said, having a negative experience being backed as a younger man, I think probably made me, once I got even a 5, 10K roll together, not want to be forced to go back knocking on someone else's door for money, right?
Yeah.
Whereas because you're comfortable kind of going up and down between the 150 ABI and down to the 30 ABI, being backed and being in makeup, because that's your personality and it doesn't really change your play and change your mindset. I'd actually agree with you. I'd change what I did myself in your shoes. I think you're right. Be really aggressive, sell pieces, play satellites, be really aggressive. Because A, you're good enough, and B, if you bust a 20, 30, 40K roll, someone will back you immediately the next week, and you'll win. It'll have another score. You'll run up another 50K roll. But if you win one of these comps for 500K, you are set. You're just fine.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So
it's not that I'm looking to do that, but like looking to bust my roll or something.
Of course, but I think being aggressive is fine to try and take a shortcut now to possibly massively multiply 5-10 years of income, because if you can quickly get to the high stakes on your own and not have to sell any, now your average sort of monthly profit is going to go way up, right?
You put yourself in a position to have that huge score. I mean, that's something that Endrit really believes in, isn't it?
Of
Like,
course,
there's
massively,
no
yeah.
way Endrick would be the player he is today if he hadn't battled in those big buy-ins. Like, he'll flick a random Sati and he's playing a 5k, you know.
Yeah,
I just don't. I don't think he'd be where he is today if he hadn't had all that experience. Like, it does really help you as a player, and he's one
Yeah.
of the huge proponents of like playing with a sicko and like really learning from them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he does agree with that.
Playing
Like,
by learning has almost
Yeah.
been kind of swamped over a little bit in the modern day, because everyone's like, no, you just have to
Yeah.
working on PO Solver and this and that and
Yeah,
the other. But then PO Solver can only teach you so much, or solvers, or
Yeah.
watching videos from elite players. When you're in there, these guys aren't often taking a line that would be would come up from a solver
they're playing
output.
street poker, isn't it?
They're playing street poker. They're exploitative. They can see you,
Yeah.
let's say on GG with a low amount of cashes compared to all of them who've got 7 figures. You've got small 6 figures, and they're like, right, this guy's going to be absolutely shitting himself. I'm just going to make his life hell, and he's not going to bother with me again. And that's kind of what you do have to learn. And we saw some of the wild plays from Dvorez versus Endrick, for example, where you're just like, whoa, what's all this? This is not by the book. But it does make sense. You watch a guy like Adamo. He doesn't strike me as the sort of guy that's just sitting on PO Solver all day. He's just a battler, isn't he?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's funny you say that about the aggressive bankroll management, because we did get a comment from my friend James asking for a DGen story. And I've got 2, and I'll try and make it quick. But so one of them was, I was in Cash Game Festival and I was the commentator, and I had a little bit of a reputation of being the commentator. Quite a good strategical player, blah blah blah. But the fact of the matter was, I was in Bulgaria and I just completely dusted my role. I think I had about 2k left, and there was a 5-5-5 card game, and the standard run bad story. I've completely dusted it off there. Ended up, I didn't remember how it happened, but I'd lost like 2 or 3 pots. I think I was down to my last 600, and it was in my pocket. And I've ended up going on a night out. I've probably spent an extra 100, got absolutely bladdered, and I've woken up on one of the sun lounges on the beach, and a guy's prodding me, and he's like, "You can't sleep here, mate. You can't sleep here." I was like, "Oh fuck, what time is it?" He told me the time. I was like, "Shit, I'm late for the commentating." And I've started running off to the casino, which was actually on the beach. It's a great location. So it's about 5 minutes. Got to the casino, sort of like stumbled into the chair, and then I've realised, hang on a sec, check my pockets. I don't have any money on me. Where's my bankroll? I don't know, like broadcasting to a live audience whilst realizing that you're completely broke must have been one of the most depressing things I've ever had to experience in my entire life.
Were you getting paid at least?
Yeah, I got paid, so I actually got the wages at the end of the trip, and then
bankroll came up. Yeah.
Back in the 2-2 game, wasn't it? Like it was a hell of a spin. And then fast forward to now, yesterday, I was playing basketball free throw games where basically 10 throws, the most amount of baskets wins. And we started off quite, let's do 100 a game or 50 a game or something. And before you know it, I just got on this insane heater. And the last game we did 20 throws. I had a 2 handicap, and he only scored 6, so only needed 5 baskets from 20 throws, right? And I've like plumped a few in early doors. I'm thinking, right, this money's mine. And then of course, once you get that kind of like complacency, all of a sudden I've missed like 6 in a row, and I'm like, hang on a sec, I need to get him with these. We're playing for 500 euros, like this is the last
escalated so quickly.
And I did manage to sort of stumble over the line somewhat, but there were moments at the back of my head, probably during those 7 baskets missed in a row, where I was thinking, hang on a second, we're playing for 500 euros here, man. This is a fucking ridiculous amount of money. It's like X% of my role, and I'm not comfortable with this,
I sell for the 525 PLO, like, but like here we go, just flicking in the full 100% of myself. How good am I at throwing a basketball? Like, how many PO fucking hours you got in the basketball labs, Gio?
What's the bankroll management for free throws?
Yeah, exactly.
I've got no idea,
I want to want to see the variance calculator actually.
Yes.
Oh mate, it was insane, and yeah,
You
in
did well
terms of
overall,
DJ,
didn't you? Yeah, you did well.
there is. Yeah, I guess the story is there is still an inner DJ in there, you know, like that's
Oh, there has to be, doesn't there?
yeah. And it did go well in the end. I did manage to win just over 2K, which was a fucking massive result.
Wages, man.
Payday.
Came back to the tables, and I
Wages.
just sort of played a short schedule because I realised I wasn't really motivated to play. You know, I'd got my fucking satisfaction out of the day already. But yeah, enough about that. So moving on. Thanks for joining us, Dan. I really appreciate you having you here. Look forward to having you on in the future if you're happy with that.
Oh yes, hopefully.
Absolutely good, and good luck with your grind. Max, any final words from you?
Not massively. Just to let everybody know that, as usual, get your questions in. And yeah, we'll do our best to end each episode, you know, answering at least one or more questions if we can. Yeah, you'll be seeing more guests in the future. And yeah, look out for Dan back on the podcast. Check him out on his social media. And yeah, hopefully for the rest of you, he won't be coming to a table near you because there's big things in this guy's future.
Yeah, it's going to be going places, and we're looking forward to seeing the journey develop alongside us in our group. So thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate you both coming on, and we will be back with you very shortly. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.